Hello, hello. And here we are at the last lecture of Intuition One. And this is just simply a review of what we have learned. Okay. This class is packed with information. And like I've said before, you don't need to memorize any of it. It's in there. It'll come up if you need it. You know where to go get information if you need it. So, we're just going to have a quick review here. Just be aware that this course, Intuition One, in fact, all the intuition classes are structured to be accelerative and brain compatible, which is a specific kind of teaching. It's for 18 years, I was an educational consultant, and this is what I specialized in, trying to teach teachers in the public school system how to use accelerative brain compatible teaching techniques and materials. So this is rich with a variety, huge variety of information that you just cannot possibly absorb all at once. And that's on purpose, because in that kind of variety, there is something for everyone. And everyone remembers something a little different. That's how it's supposed to be. Okay. However, even though you can't absorb it all at once, the seeds, the information will sprout, and it'll come into your own consciousness later on very naturally. And that makes it more like your own knowledge coming from within. That's what you want. If you can't use the information, you ignore it. Later, if it comes out as part of something you know, that is really the way we should be learning. We see something, we hear something, we set it aside until we need it, and then it becomes ours, our knowledge, not something you memorize. That bolsters trust in yourself. When that information comes from within, it bolsters trust in yourself. It supports and bolsters your own intuition. What is the meaning of the word intuition? Information and knowledge coming from within. And it supports your self-esteem. So at the same time, it allows your consciousness to put things together in novel ways unique to you. One of the big problems out there with the education system we have is that by the time you learn all of the facts and data and perspectives that they want you to learn, you have lost your creativity. You have to move away from that to some extent and get beyond all of the rules and the data that you have absorbed in school in order to see something more creatively. And then once you do that, you can take that information and put things together in new ways. And that is what causes a civilization to evolve. And that's what you want. So this kind of education uses the cycles of consciousness, and it leaves you to remember and play with what interests you, thus nurturing your unique contribution as you and the knowledge mature. That is so important. When I said, okay, we're going to do something called the rose, the trumpet, and the hot day, that's a very different use of consciousness. Same thing with the walk into the forest, the guided imagery, and all of the other information, visually, auditorially stimulating. So that's an accelerative brain compatible class. Let's sum up a few of the things we learned. Okay. Number one, we learned that spiritual development is the development of the true spirit of yourself. It's not some sort of religious thing. It certainly has nothing to do with religion at all. And true spirituality is that goofy, sometimes nerdy, sometimes very precise, sometimes devil may care spirit that lives within you that other people are always trying to squish. Okay. They're always trying to get you to conform. That is the destruction of your spirituality. Spirituality is the development of the true spirit of the self, coupled with, and we'll say this later on, I believe, coupled with the fact that you now assign your own meaning to things instead of accepting the meaning the world gives. Okay? So, number 2, the development of consciousness is accompanied by changes in the meaning of almost everything. Before, what meant a great deal to you may suddenly become meaningless. And that usually causes some kind of spiritual crisis. Are you going to listen to your consciousness? Are you going to change the meaning of something? If what life meant before was getting as much education as you could and getting to the top of the corporate ladder, and that suddenly goes away, and you have married somebody who married you because he or she liked that corporate ladder idea, then there's a problem there. You're going to have to rework that relationship. So the development of consciousness changes the meaning of everything. Number 3, the meaning of things changes from meanings assigned by parents, teachers, and friends to meanings assigned by your mature self. And that's going to be based on the truth of what is. You will see things differently. You'll see actually with the whole brain. And so the quality becomes very important. Next, we have the power, or the power that I'm pushing you toward in these classes. That power is to be used to change yourself. First, you. You're not going to change the world. You're not going to change the family. You're not going to change your ancestral history. You're not, power is not for controlling others. It is used to change you. Why? Because nobody can do your perception for you, which I say, I'm going to repeat that all the way through all these classes. And at the end of your life, whatever you have accomplished is yours. And if you wasted the whole life conforming, refusing to make changes, getting on board the latest bandwagon, etc., and there was no development of your consciousness, well, you're going to come back and do it all again until you figure out that nobody's going to make a difference in your life except you. And the goal is to become an eternal being of great love, great wisdom, great power, and grace. Grace is the ability to move with the energies, to see, to watch those energies, to know where they're going, and then to align yourself with them. That's power and grace. Number 5, we learned that it is the nature of consciousness to create. That's what consciousness does. What is it creating? It's creating feeling. It creates all these scenarios in which you have experiences that create feeling. Why? Remember me saying it's because feeling verifies to you that you exist. That's what consciousness is doing. It's bringing you experiences that you can learn from, grow, and know I am. Okay. Number 6, consciousness is always awake and working to create experience that produces feeling. Always. Consciousness has no need to sleep. Number 7, the brain is built in 3 main parts. The brainstem is the reptilian area. The midbrain area is the mammalian brain, and the cortex is the distinctly human brain. And each one is responsible for doing something a little different. Breathing and heart rate in the brainstem, personality, fight, flight, the 4 F's, all of that. And then the cortex is your storage for all the things that you know. Number 8, the brain is not finished developing or growing. It's always being revised, remodeled, and added to, always. Next, we have number 9, the reptilian brain is responsible for breathing and heart rate. Number 10, the mammalian brain is responsible for the 4 F's, feeding, fighting, fleeing, and sex. Okay. Number 11, the mammalian brain is the seat of personality. The way that you are taught to respond is what determines your personality. And when you produce chemicals that cause certain feelings, you're going to respond according to those feelings. So we learned that the cortex is responsible for storage of all sorts of information. It's like the hard drive of the brain. Number 13, can we say it again? Feeling is primary. Feeling is primary. Number 14, there is a priority of operation in the brain. There's a priority of operation. Number 15, the reptilian brain must be working in order to have access to the mammalian brain and the cortex. You have to have breathing and heart rate, or nothing else matters. Number 16, the mammalian brain must be working and not in fight or flight mode in order to have access to the cortex. You don't need access to all your storage when the tiger is chasing you. You just need to run and keep your eyes open as to where you could go. Where can you find safety? Number 17, if you are a visual learner, you're going to trust what you see. 18, if you are an auditory learner, you will trust what you hear. Okay. Number 19, if you are a kinesthetic learner, you will trust what you feel. And number 20, you cannot have a feeling at all unless you can produce the chemical that produces the feeling. Let's say you get into a frequency state where that frequency is going to produce chemical XYZ, but you don't have the minerals, the aminos, the proteins, the supplies. Your condition, your nutritional state is exhausted. You've used it all up. You're not going to be able to produce the feeling very well at all. It's just one of those things. You have to be in good shape, nutritionally, as well as muscle exercise-wise, as well as mentally clear. So you can't have a feeling unless you can produce the chemical that produces the feeling. And when I was working at a school for learning and emotionally disabled children, they could not produce certain chemicals. They could not, they were deficient. So that is the definition of learning disabled, unable to produce the feeling that allows you to understand some fact, some quality of some fact and take it in. Number 21, the hypothalamus, that little tiny cube-like thing in the brain, The hypothalamus is known as the brain of the brain. It responds to your consciousness and then gives orders to the pituitary to produce hormones and chemicals that will be in alignment with your state of mind, your consciousness. Number 22. There are 4 enemies on the journey to wisdom, power, and eternal life. Those 4 enemies are fear, clarity, power itself, and old age. Those are the 4 enemies. Number 23, we live in a world of frequencies. Everything is frequency. It's energy in motion. Number 24, frequencies are the basis of all physical matter and are responsible for the shapes, textures, and characteristics of matter. That matter gets all of its form and its texture and its operation from the arrangement of frequencies that make up the form. Change the frequencies, you change the form. Number 25. The frequencies of the 3rd dimension, 3D, are beta, alpha, theta, delta, high beta, and occasionally gamma. Lots of people can't really get into gamma, but we're evolving in that direction. So those are our main frequencies. Number 26. Each frequency allows a different kind of perception and response. So let me take a moment to kind of move to give an example here. Each frequency allows a different kind of response. Let's say that you're a mother and you have a 2-year-old child, and it's lunchtime, and you're tired, etc. But you make, let's say, a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for that child and give him some milk in a glass. And he's sitting in maybe a high chair at the table, or maybe in a high chair itself. And you don't want to eat, so you're sitting at the table. And he's fiddling with the food, and you're in beta. You're in beta consciousness. You're watching him fiddle and thinking, just eat the darn thing, quit playing with it. And then he takes a drink of milk and sets that milk right on the edge of the table. And a minute later, he knocks it over. If you're in beta, you're going to be upset. You're going to run to get a mop or a rag or something to mop it up with, and maybe yell at the child a little bit or feel irritated. And that's beta. But now let's say you're in alpha. You're sitting there at the table. You're relaxing. You're not really in a big hurry. You're just, sitting there with your child while he or she eats. And you're in alpha. And he sets the milk on the edge of the table. And you have this momentary awareness. That's awful close to the edge of the table. But you don't do anything because you're in alpha. And a minute later, over goes the milk. You will get up and quietly go get something to clean it up. And there might be a moment of feeling of irritation, but it was, I knew that was going to happen. That's what you tell yourself. You saw it and you did know, and you didn't take any action. So let's say that now you're at the table with your 2-year-old and you're in the theta and you're tired, you sit down, you're sitting there, you close your eyes, the child is eating, he sets the milk on the edge of the table, and a few minutes later he knocks it off, over goes the milk. And if you're in theta, you might hear it and think, what is that sound? You might not know that the milk, spilled, unless it splashes on your leg. And when you do, it'll be like, oh, it's kind of like waking up and you go get something to clean it up. If you're in Delta, you wouldn't respond at all. If you were in high beta, the milk would go over and you would go ballistic. You know, stupid kid, why'd you do that? Blah, 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 blah. You know, when I say that each frequency allows a different kind of response, that's what I mean. Your perception at each frequency, whether you're in alpha, theta, delta, whatever, that is going to determine how you will respond. So keep that in mind. Number 27. Information held in the cortex of the brain is in the form of frequency encoding. So you don't open the brain and see an elephant in there, or a steak dinner, or a cat, or a dog. What you have in the brain is, a bunch of little columns that are tuned to a certain frequency. And when that frequency comes in through your eyes, that column lights up. And the whole pattern of either the elephant or the steak dinner or the cat, whatever it is, that whole pattern fills your consciousness. And we say, oh, I see. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Okay, number 28. Stress. Ooh. Stress shuts down or severely limits consciousness. Stress actually drugs you so that you're in an altered state all the time. It's not a way to live. Number 29. Poor health limits consciousness. Why? Because poor health indicates that you do not have the nutritional supplies on hand to be able to produce the proteins, the chemistry, the neurotransmitters, the hormones, the things that would help run the body beautifully and with a sense of joy and accomplishment. So poor health limits consciousness. Number 30. Stress has 3 stages. Stage 1 is alarm. That alarm takes 2 minutes to be fully unfolded in the body. The second stage is resistance, where you just keep producing more and more chemicals, using up your nutrition at 4 times your normal rate. And the last stage is exhaustion. Totally exhausted. System gives up and dies. So you cannot live in a state of stress. It is not just a mental figment. It's not something imaginary. It is a physical condition. And that's what number 31 says. Stress is a physiological event, not a bad mood or a figment of one's imagination. Number 32. The forms of intelligence that are recognized by Western civilization are linguistic intelligence, musical intelligence, logical mathematic intelligence, spatial intelligence, bodily kinesthetic intelligence, interpersonal intelligence, and intrapersonal intelligence. There are other forms, but the West doesn't use those. Number 33. Almost everyone has multiple forms of intelligence at their fingertips and typically uses at least 2 or 3 daily. We are amazing creatures. We're incredibly intelligent. And number 34, as far as the brain is concerned, there are only two feeling states, pain and pleasure. That's what you're wired for, pain or pleasure. Number 35, the brain does not differentiate between real or imagined experience. What are you doing in that head of yours? Okay. Number 36, guided imagery is a real experience as far as consciousness is concerned, which is why some of you may have experienced change on your way back out of the forest already. You know, the water was different, the fence was different, your shoes are different. Those indicate that the experience, the imaginary guided imagery experience has already changed you. It's amazing. Number 37, similar to the way in which guided imagery works, the outside world supplies a form or a word, and you supply your own personal images, sounds, feelings, and interpretations that give the form or the word a meaning. Okay? That's the way guided imagery works. You say a fence, you supply what kind of fence. You say some water, you supply what kind of water, what that looks like, etc. And you do that based on your own personal images, sounds, feelings, and interpretations. Okay. Number 38. As consciousness develops and meanings change, there can be stress and confusion in your life. And you may need some support, or at least somebody to talk to. It's really wonderful if you have a friend that goes through these classes with you, because then you have somebody you can say, I had this dream, or I had that vision, or, I heard this message, or whatever it is. Sometimes there is stress and confusion because everything about the way you view the world begins to change. Number 39. Here comes again. No one can do your perception for you. It's your perception. Nobody can be born for you. Nobody can die for you. Nobody can do your perception in between those two events. You come here to grow and evolve yourself. Don't waste your time. Number 40. Energy is the language of consciousness. Consciousness is energy. Okay? Energy is consciousness. So let me say it a little bit differently. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy, and energy is the motion of consciousness. It's like two sides of one coin. When you think about energy being the motion of consciousness, look at the power and the impact that your consciousness could have if it learned to use and manage all that power that's out there in the universe, or at least a little portion of it. All of it would be a little extreme, but you could learn to use some of it. Wow. Consciousness is the feeling aspect of energy. Energy is the motion of consciousness. Make that motion be deliberate because you said so. Okay. Consciousness uses symbols to express the language of energy. Uses symbols. We all know what a cup does. We all know what a car does. It's used to transport you. We all know what curtains do. They are used to shut out the light. We all know what what a gun does. All of those are symbols, and they all have some kind of purpose in terms of manipulating, managing energy. Okay? Symbols manage energy. Or they are the way they give us a clue as to how we are managing energy. Okay, symbols or consciousness uses symbols to express the language of energy. Number 42, we have far more than 5 senses. Oh, yeah. There are at least 24 senses that we know of so far. At least. Number 43. Left brain perception is linear and vocal. Broca's area is over in the left brain. Number 44. Right brain perception is holistic, artistic, and mute. Number 45. Intuition is one of the personal intelligences. Okay? Intuition, knowing from within. Know thyself. Number 46. Healing occurs when you are in delta consciousness. Why? Because it's quiet enough for some very delicate assemblies to be put together inside of you that will regenerate, rebuild you. Delta, very quiet. Number 47, the brain encodes frequencies as patterns. Learn to recognize patterns everywhere in space and time, and you have developed a major skill of intuition. Intuition uses, to some extent, pattern recognition. And even a snippet of a pattern will give you a clue as to where things are going. So the brain encodes frequencies as patterns. Number 48. We cycle through the basic frequencies of consciousness all day and all night, at least if we're living kind of naturally. Okay? It's a little bit more challenging if you go to work in a corporation. But we cycle through the basic frequencies of consciousness all day and all night. Number 49. The brain emits a chemical that paralyzes us from the neck down when we dream. Why? So that you don't, if you live on the 12th floor of some big building and you imagine you're going to a door and walking out, you don't want to be walking out a window 12 stories up. So the brain just paralyzes you from the neck down so that you cannot carry out the kinds of activities or respond to the kinds of experience you're creating in some other dimension that may have nothing to do with where your body is at. So what actually happens is the chemical reduces electrical signaling between brain and body by 90%. Just enough electricity to keep the heart going and to keep you in delta, etc. To heal, but not to get up and take action. There's some stories I could tell, but I'll save those for later. Number 50, dream paralysis prevents dangerous behavior while consciousness is creating experience elsewhere. That's what I just mentioned. I have heard some stories that would make your hair stand on end, and they also indicate that sometimes you can be doing things in this reality where your consciousness is asleep or your body's asleep, but you're walking in your sleep, acting in your sleep, and doing things that are not normally possible in this reality. So we can override. Sometimes children walk in their sleep, sometimes adults do. But it has to be a pretty powerful driver that gets you to override that paralysis. So, number 51. Beta is your everyday consciousness. It's outwardly focused and it runs between 12, give or take a hertz or two, 12 and 20 cycles per second. That's beta, everyday consciousness. Alpha, number 52. Alpha is the daydream state, and it's dual consciousness with an internal and external focus. You're watching what's happening in the world. You're aware of something inside you. You're hungry, you're tired, you're feeling like you need to do something else. You're, whatever it is, there's an internal and external awareness. And that runs between 8 and 12 cycles per second, roughly speaking. Number 53. Theta is the perfect learning state. It's inwardly focused and it runs between 4 and 8 cycles per second. Why is it the perfect learning state? Because you're not distracted by anything external. All of your focus is internal. So you are completely focused on the images and the experiences that are occurring in your consciousness. And you learn from that beautifully. Number 54, delta is the slow wave sleep. It has no conscious focus, and it's where healing happens. And it runs between 0 and 4 cycles per second. Down in delta, you are not responding to, there are no images. Consciousness is not generating images or experience. And you are, you're really very, very quiet. You're healing at that point. Okay. Number 55. High beta is the high stress state. And it opens to alternate forms of consciousness. All kinds of stuff can happen in high beta and visions. And high beta runs between 20 and say 29 cycles per second, 28, 29, somewhere in there. Number 56, gamma is the channel state. And it's a channel to other dimensions, other versions of yourself that operate at a completely different range of frequencies, way up there. It streams higher forms of consciousness and runs between 29 and 40 or greater cycles per second. Still doing research up there, above 40 cycles per second. Number 57, the cycle of attention is habituation, stimulation, focusing, attention, relaxation, and return to habituation. That's the cycle of attention. Okay, so depending on the type of stimulation, the cycle of attention can lead to temporary insanity or temporary illumination. Okay, temporary insanity is when your brain shuts off, blocks whatever's happening from your memory forever, so that you will not think badly of yourself. And temporary illumination is a Kundalini type experience in which you enter into the God state. Number 59, concepts and techniques that you can use on your own to improve your consciousness, expand your consciousness, include A, practice focusing your attention elsewhere in non-local places. Go see what your wife is doing at work, or your husband, or see what how your child is feeling, or go check on your mother. something, anything, anybody that is non-local that you care about, that you can connect into more easily. We easily connect into people we love. So just put your attention elsewhere, pick up what you pick up, write down and make a note, date and time. What did you pick up about that husband or that child or that parent? And then if you happen to talk to them, share. B, allow yourself to perceive whatever you can without rejecting what you see or know. That should be or know. I'll fix that in a minute. Allow yourself to perceive whatever you can without rejecting it. You don't have to hop on some bandwagon. You don't have to dump all your other beliefs. You just have to see. See what you see and go, oh, look at that. What should I do with that, if anything? Write down what you see, date and time. C, allow yourself to take in and contemplate whatever you perceive, whatever that is. And that includes both in your everyday, as well as, I'm going to say, what's happening elsewhere in the world, and you're watching it either on video or YouTube or television or something like that. Take it in and think about that. What does that say about us, the people? Okay. And if it's a vision, same thing. Take it in and contemplate where did that come from? What do I need to do about that? Anything? That kind of thing. Next, D, get in a habit of jotting down what you saw, heard, felt, knew, or understood. Sometimes you can't describe it, and all you can say is, I had a feeling that was not good. That is something. So jot that down. And getting in the habit of keeping a notebook where all of your learnings, all of your perceptions, all of your experiences go into that. When you go back and look at that a year or two from now, you're going to be stunned at how you have changed and the things that you can do. So next, E, get your consciousness out of its usual box of habitual ideas. Just for the heck of it, pretend that you live in mid-South Africa or Afghanistan or Western China or something like that. Just put your attention and your consciousness in some other location for a day. I used to make my students, at some point, they had to take on a different identity. And we had some of the most interesting and powerful experiences. Wow. Next, F, reduce vague fears and worries. Just face them. They tend to fade away. Reduce vague fears and worries by facing them directly. You know, the best way to handle anything is to take it on. Take it on. Decide what you're going to do differently. You don't have to have a single answer. You could say, well, I'm going to do this. If that doesn't work, I'll do this. If that doesn't work, maybe I'll try that. We need to practice being flexible. So important. So I think we got a few more here. G, give yourself permission to move beyond your early programming without making that programming bad. That is really critical. Don't make other people or your civilization or your religion or whatever, your family, don't make that bad. It was what it was. the thing to practice doing is give yourself permission to move beyond and celebrate the fact that you're moving beyond that programming. H, spend a few minutes each day increasing your sensitivity to your environment and everything in it. Just sit very quietly and imagine extending your ears outward 20 feet in both directions, left and right. Or practice putting your eyes inside the earth or 50,000 feet above the earth or on the planet Venus or someplace, any place, someplace else, increasing your sensitivity to your environment. Let images come to you and feelings. You'll be surprised. You'll be surprised, let me tell you. Next, I every so often pretend you are someone else. Here's what I just mentioned. And spend the day with a different name, a different history, a different way of responding, and a different way of looking at the world. Wear a particular hat that reminds you of this. I have a whole stack of hats that I used to have students wear. They had to become someone else during one of the weekend classes. And it was surprising to them how much their understanding of other people increased, how much their patience increased, their tolerance, their insight was off the charts. And the freedom to be someone new then transfers to not just the person you were trying to pretend you were, but to the new version of yourself. Okay. Practice being, spending the day with a different name, a different history. Tell somebody else, that you were an astronaut or that you were a diamond miner in Africa for a while or that, whatever. So in closing, don't try to memorize any of what we just covered. It's all in there. I've said it before, I'll say it again. It's all in there and it'll come to you naturally. Thank you so much for being here and especially for being willing to explore the consciousness you have. Few things are as exciting as the journey within. You are an amazing being. And I think you're going to find your entire experience of the world changing for the better. And I'll tell you what, right now that world out there needs some pretty awake people who are quietly in charge of themselves. Okay, so thank you. And that's the end of What Have We Learned? Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Take care of yourself first. Okay?